Put her in economy. First class is for passengers who actually belong here. The words cracked through the quiet cabin with the force of a slammed door, stopping conversations, freezing smiles, and drawing every pair of eyes towards seat 1A. Melissa Grant didn't whisper them. She wanted every passenger to hear. She wanted the humiliation to become part of the boarding process. Standing in the aisle, Dr. Simone Avery looked at the boarding pass that had been ripped cleanly in half only seconds earlier. One piece rested near her polished black loafers while the other remained in Melissa's hand like a trophy. Across the aisle, a well-dressed white businessman eased himself comfortably into seat 1A, accepted a glass of champagne from another flight attendant, and smiled as though everything unfolding around him was perfectly normal. "Ma'am, you're delaying departure," Melissa said, folding her arms. "Take your bag and move to economy before airport security escorts you off this aircraft." Simone didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked at Melissa with the calm expression of someone who had seen this moment more times than anyone should. Around them, whispers spread across the first-class cabin. Some passengers avoided eye contact. Others watched openly, uncertain whether they were witnessing an honest mistake or something far uglier. A young flight attendant named Rachel Brooks stood frozen near the galley, her face draining of color as she glanced between Simone and the electronic manifest on the tablet still glowing in her hands. She knew exactly what she had seen less than 5 minutes earlier. Seat 1A had scanned green. The passengers standing in front of them had every legal right to be there. Yet somehow her name had disappeared from the screen. "I already told you," Melissa snapped. "The system corrected the error." Simone finally spoke, her voice so steady that it forced the surrounding silence to grow even heavier. "Did the system correct it?" she asked. "Or did someone decide I didn't look like first class?" Nobody answered. Even the businessman in seat 1A stopped smiling for a moment before leaning back into the leather seat as if possession alone could erase the question. The captain emerged from the cockpit, adjusting his uniform jacket before approaching with practiced confidence. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. Melissa answered before Simone had the chance. "Passenger refuses to follow crew instructions. Claims this is her seat." The captain gave Simone only the briefest glance before nodding toward the rear of the aircraft. "Ma'am, I'd appreciate your cooperation." Simone looked from the captain to Melissa, then toward the boarding door that still remained open. Outside, the jet bridge hummed with the last few passengers making their way on board. Inside, every second felt heavier than the one before. She slipped her phone from her pocket but didn't unlock it. Instead, she looked directly into Melissa's eyes and quietly said, "Before anyone touches me, you should ask yourself why your system suddenly forgot my name." Rachel's heartbeat pounded in her ears as she stared once more at the hidden audit screen on her tablet, and what she saw made her stomach drop. The passenger record for seat 1A hadn't vanished by accident. It had been manually altered exactly 43 seconds after Dr. Simone Avery stepped onto the airplane. 15 minutes earlier, the boarding gate had been almost peaceful, the kind of calm that only existed before hundreds of lives scattered across different destinations. Travelers checked their phones, families compared boarding groups, and business executives hurried through final emails before the aircraft doors closed. Dr. Simone Avery blended into that ordinary rhythm so completely that nobody gave her a second look. She wore a charcoal sweater, dark jeans, simple loafers, and carried a slim leather travel case with no designer logo announcing wealth or status. That was intentional. For the third time in 6 weeks, she had chosen to travel alone without an assistant, security detail, or executive entourage. 3 months earlier, anonymous complaints had begun arriving at Crown Meridian Aviation Group. The stories were remarkably similar. Black passengers with confirmed premium seats were suddenly reassigned. Boarding records mysteriously changed. Customer complaints disappeared before internal investigators could review them. Every report ended with the same explanation. System error. Technical issue. Unfortunate misunderstanding. Simone had read every file herself. Numbers rarely lied, but people often hid behind them. That was why she refused to investigate from a boardroom nearly 2,000 miles away. If the culture was broken, she wanted to see it with her own eyes. When Rachel Brooks scanned Simone's boarding pass at the aircraft door, the scanner flashed bright green and emitted the familiar confirmation tone. Rachel smiled politely. Welcome aboard, Dr. Avery. Seat 1 Alpha is straight ahead on your left. Simone thanked her with a warm smile and stepped into the first-class cabin. She noticed fresh flowers arranged near the galley, polished wood finishes reflecting the cabin lights, and passengers settling comfortably into oversized leather seats. Everything looked exactly as the airline's advertisements promised. Then Melissa Grant looked up from her tablet. Her eyes moved slowly from Simone's face to her clothing, then towards Seat 1 Alpha. It lasted only a few seconds, but Simone recognized the expression immediately. She had seen it in luxury hotels, private banking offices, and executive boardrooms long before becoming one of the most influential leaders in American aviation. It was not curiosity. It was calculation. Melissa walked toward Rachel without greeting Simone. "Show me the manifest," she said quietly. Rachel handed over the tablet without hesitation. Melissa studied the screen for several moments before glancing toward a white passenger waiting near the boarding door. Eric Vaughn adjusted his tailored navy jacket and gave Melissa a subtle nod that almost nobody noticed. Almost nobody except Simone. Their eyes met for less than a heartbeat before Eric looked away. Melissa lowered her voice even further. "He is one of our highest value customers. We are not embarrassing him today." Rachel frowned. "But Seat 1 Alpha already belongs to Dr. Avery. The record has been confirmed." Melissa's expression hardened. Not for much longer. Rachel felt her stomach tighten as Melissa began. Navigating through administrative menus that flight attendants almost never opened during boarding. One screen disappeared. Another appeared. Then another. Rachel stared at the display in disbelief as letters shifted, assignments refreshed, and the name Dr. Simone Avery vanished from Seat 1 Alpha as though it had never existed. Melissa handed the tablet back with a satisfied smile. "There," she whispered. "Now the system agrees with me." Eric Vaughn did not even pretend to be uncomfortable. He stepped into Seat 1 Alpha with the confidence of a man who believed expensive loyalty programs carried more value than simple fairness. He placed his tailored jacket across the armrest, accepted another glass of champagne, and smiled toward Melissa Grant as though an invisible transaction had just been completed. Rachel Brooks stood motionless beside the galley, still gripping the tablet that only moments earlier had displayed Dr. Simone Avery's confirmed reservation. She looked down again, hoping she had somehow imagined what she saw. She had not. The digital history no longer matched her memory. Simone remained standing beside the seat without showing frustration. Her calm unsettled Melissa far more than anger would have. Most passengers argued. Some demanded supervisors. Others threatened lawsuits before eventually accepting whatever compromise the airline offered. Simone did none of those things. She simply studied every face around her, quietly observing who was speaking, who was watching, and who was choosing silence. "There has obviously been a booking mistake," Melissa announced loudly enough for the first-class cabin to hear. "Your assigned seat is no longer available. We can offer you a comfortable seat in economy." Simone looked directly at the electronic manifest in Rachel's hands. "Please print the seat assignment history," she said. "I would like to see every change made since boarding began." Melissa laughed softly. "Passengers do not have access to internal records. Neither do flight attendants," Simone replied, "unless someone deliberately opens administrative controls." Rachel felt her pulse quicken. Melissa's eyes narrowed for only a fraction of a second before her smile returned. "You seem to know a lot about airline systems." "I know enough to recognize when records stop matching reality." Several nearby passengers exchanged uncertain glances. A middle-aged woman across the aisle quietly lowered the magazine she had been reading. 2 rows behind, a man wearing headphones removed them completely. The cabin no longer sounded like routine boarding. It sounded like something breaking beneath the polished surface. At that moment, Captain Thomas Reed stepped out of the cockpit with the composed expression of someone expecting a minor inconvenience. Melissa approached him immediately. "Captain, this passenger refuses to cooperate after her seating issue was resolved." Thomas barely looked toward Simone before answering. "Ma'am, we are on a schedule. Please accept the reassigned seat so we can depart." Simone tilted her head slightly. "Captain, before asking me to surrender my seat, have you verified that it was ever reassigned legally?" Thomas hesitated only briefly. "I trust my crew," Simone answered without changing her tone. "Trust is strongest after verification, not before it." Eric Vaughn leaned comfortably against the leather headrest and chuckled. Some people just cannot admit they are in the wrong cabin. A few nervous laughs drifted through the first-class section. Melissa folded her arms, encouraged by the reaction. Exactly. We have premium customers waiting to enjoy their flight. Simone glanced toward Eric. Interesting choice of words. What words? He asked. Waiting, Simone answered. Because according to the original manifest, you were never waiting for this seat. Rachel's breath caught. Melissa immediately stepped between them. That is enough. Rachel, remove the tablet. Rachel obeyed, but before lowering the screen, she caught one final detail buried inside the audit menu. The system had quietly preserved a hidden timestamp. Seat 1 Alpha had not been reassigned during booking. It had been manually altered exactly 43 seconds after boarding, and the employee identification attached to the change belonged to Melissa Grant. Rachel Brooks lowered the tablet exactly as Melissa had ordered, but not before her eyes memorized every detail on the audit screen. The employee identification attached to the manual seat reassignment was unmistakable. Melissa Grant. The timestamp matched the exact moment Dr. Simone Avery had stepped into the first-class cabin. Rachel swallowed hard. She had worked for Sterling Atlantic for less than 9 months, but even she understood that administrative changes made after boarding required formal approval. This one had happened in seconds, without authorization, and for reasons that had nothing to do with safety. Melissa turned back toward the passengers with the polished smile she reserved for uncomfortable situations. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We have resolved the seating discrepancy. Simone answered before anyone else could speak. No, you erased the discrepancy. You did not resolve it. The cabin fell quiet again. A man seated in the third row slowly closed his laptop and washed without saying a word. His name was Darius Cole, a corporate attorney traveling to Washington for a regulatory conference. He had spent 2 decades studying compliance failures, and something about this exchange felt painfully familiar. Melissa ignored Simone's comment and gestured toward the aisle. Please proceed to economy so everyone else can enjoy their flight. Simone remained exactly where she was. I have a simple request, she said. Preserve the boarding records exactly as they exist right now. Do not change another line. Melissa's smile disappeared. You are not giving instructions to my crew. Darius finally stood. His voice was calm, but it carried through the cabin with surprising clarity. Actually, preserving electronic records after a disputed transaction is standard practice in almost every regulated industry. Melissa turned sharply toward him. Sir, this situation does not concern you. The moment procedures stop following policy, Darius replied. It concerns every passenger on this aircraft. Several heads nodded. The atmosphere shifted almost imperceptibly. People who had been silent moments earlier were beginning to pay attention to details instead of appearances. Rachel looked down at the tablet again. Hidden beneath the current seating chart, the audit menu still retained temporary cache files before the next system refresh. Acting on instinct, she quietly opened the internal screenshot function and captured 3 images in rapid succession. The original assignment showing Dr. Simone Avery in Seat 1 Alpha. Eric Vaughn's confirmed reservation for Seat 4 Charlie. And the administrative log identifying Melissa Grant as the employee who altered the record. Her hands trembled as she saved the files into protected memory. If Melissa discovered what she had done, her career could end before the aircraft ever left the gate. Simone noticed the movement, but said nothing. Instead, she met Rachel's eyes with the smallest nod, not encouraging her to take risks, simply acknowledging the quiet courage it had taken to protect the truth. Captain Thomas Reed stepped forward again, his patience wearing thin. This discussion is over, he said firmly. Either accept the reassigned seat, or you will be removed from this flight for refusing crew instructions. Simone looked at him steadily. Captain, are you ordering me to surrender my confirmed seat without reviewing the evidence? Thomas answered without hesitation. I am ordering you to comply with my crew. Rachel felt her heart sink. The hidden screenshots were now safe, but another notification suddenly appeared in the corner of her screen. The entire boarding audit log was scheduled to refresh automatically in less than 60 seconds, permanently deleting every trace of the original seat assignment unless someone stopped the system first. The countdown in the corner of Rachel Brooks's screen dropped below 1 minute. 58 seconds. 57. Every passing second brought the system closer to permanently refreshing the boarding log, replacing the original record with the altered version that would make the reassignment appear completely legitimate. Rachel could almost hear the clock louder than the passengers around her. Melissa Grant noticed Rachel staring at the tablet and walked toward her with measured confidence. "Close the audit menu," she ordered. "There is nothing else to review." Rachel hesitated for only a moment before locking the screen instead of closing it completely. "Yes, ma'am," she answered quietly, hoping Melissa would not notice the difference. Captain Thomas Reed looked back toward the boarding door where two airport customer service agents had appeared after hearing that boarding had stopped. They remained outside the aircraft, waiting for instructions. "We are finished discussing this," Thomas said. "If necessary, we will request additional assistance so this flight can depart on time." Dr. Simone Avery remained perfectly still. The tension around her seemed to move while she did not. She watched every decision unfold exactly as though she had expected each one long before stepping onto the aircraft. "Captain," she said calmly, "every choice made after this moment becomes far more difficult to explain than the one before it." Thomas answered with visible frustration. "The only thing delaying this flight is your refusal to cooperate." Simone looked toward the window for a brief moment. Beyond the glass, baggage vehicles crossed the ramp beneath the afternoon sun. The airport moved with remarkable precision, every team trusting the information flowing through thousands of interconnected systems. Trust depended on accurate records. Once records became optional, safety eventually followed. Those words echoed inside her mind because they had come from someone she loved many years earlier. Suddenly, another airport returned to her memory. She was 19 years old, standing outside a boarding gate after being told that her confirmed reservation had somehow disappeared. She remembered watching other passengers walk onto the aircraft while she remained behind, holding valid travel documents that no one wanted to examine. She remembered calling her mother, embarrassed, angry, and confused. Her mother had listened quietly before saying something Simone never forgot. "Never let someone else's opinion decide your value. One day you will have the power to change the rules. When that day comes, change them for everyone, not only for yourself." The memory faded as quickly as it had appeared. Simone looked back at Melissa with the same steady composure. "This is not about a seat," she said. It stopped being about a seat the moment someone decided the records should match an assumption instead of the truth. Eric Vaughn laughed from seat 1 Alpha. "You are making a speech over an airline upgrade." Simone answered without looking at him. "No. I am watching people reveal what they believe nobody else can see." Rachel glanced at the hidden timer again. 32 seconds remained before the automated refresh. Her hands tightened around the tablet. If the cache disappeared, the screenshots she had saved would remain, but the live audit trail proving exactly when the changes occurred would vanish from the aircraft system. Melissa suddenly extended her hand. "Rachel," she said sharply, "give me the tablet." Rachel froze. At that exact moment, the timer reached 29 seconds, and a bright notification appeared across the locked display. "Automatic synchronization ready. Confirmed to proceed." Rachel Brooks looked at Melissa Grant's outstretched hand, then at the flashing notification on the locked tablet. 28 seconds. 27. Her heartbeat echoed louder than the boarding announcements outside the aircraft. If she surrendered the device, the synchronization would erase the remaining live evidence. If she refused, she would almost certainly lose the job she had worked so hard to earn. Before she could answer, Dr. Simone Avery quietly reached into her coat pocket and removed her phone. There was no anger in her expression, no urgency, only certainty. She unlocked the screen, selected a single contact, and waited for the call to connect. "Naomi," she said calmly when the line opened. "Initiate Meridian Protocol 7. Open the passenger integrity map. Compare every manual first-class reassignment across the network during the last 6 hours. Preserve every audit record before synchronization." Her words sounded almost ordinary to everyone else in the cabin. Melissa smiled with open disbelief. "Calling your lawyer is not going to save your seat." Simone did not even glance toward her. "I did not call a lawyer." On the other end of the line, Naomi Bennett answered without hesitation. "Protocol 7 acknowledged. Beginning integrity preservation now." Her fingers moved rapidly across multiple encrypted dashboards inside Crown Meridian Aviation Group's Global Operations Center. Artificial intelligence monitoring systems immediately suspended automatic log deletion and began copying live boarding records into protected archives. Naomi frowned as fresh data filled the screens. One reassignment became 3. 3 became 19. Then dozens more appeared from airports across the country. The same pattern repeated itself again and again. Premium seats originally assigned to black passengers had been manually reassigned minutes before departure. Administrative credentials were used. Audit trails were altered. Complaints disappeared after boarding closed. Naomi's voice returned, noticeably more serious than before. Dr. Avery, this is no longer isolated to one aircraft. I am detecting identical manual overrides on 152 active departures. Simone closed her eyes for a brief second, not in surprise, but in disappointment. Verify before escalation, she replied. Already verified, Naomi answered. The integrity score has collapsed. Revenue exposure exceeds $2.1 billion if compromised passenger records continue through the network. Several nearby passengers exchanged puzzled looks. Melissa folded her arms and laughed softly. This is becoming quite a performance. Captain Thomas Reed looked impatiently toward the boarding door. Ma'am, if that call is finished, I need you to leave the aircraft. Simone slipped the phone away from her ear for only a moment. Captain, the call has only just begun. Naomi spoke again, her voice perfectly controlled. Recommendation: immediate operational hold until passenger identity records are secured. Awaiting your authorization. Simone did not answer immediately. She looked around the first-class cabin instead. Rachel still stood frozen with the tablet. Darius Cole watched every word. Eric Vaughn leaned comfortably in seat 1 Alpha, convinced none of this could possibly affect him. Melissa remained absolutely certain she was still in control. Only then did Simone give the instruction. Authorize the hold. Preserve every record. Nobody edits another passenger file. Naomi responded instantly. Authorization confirmed. Less than 3 seconds later, the cockpit communication panel emitted a sharp, alert tone unlike the routine boarding chimes. Captain Thomas Reed turned toward the display, and the color drained from his face as a bright red message appeared across the operations screen. Network operations hold. All departure clearances temporarily suspended. Contact Global Command immediately. The warning tone echoed through the cockpit with a sharp precision that nobody on board had heard before. Captain Thomas Reed stepped toward the flight deck without another word, his confident posture replaced by visible uncertainty. He stared at the operations display as new messages streamed across the screen faster than he could read them. Every departure authorization linked to the airline's network had shifted into temporary hold status. Gate agents were requesting explanations. Dispatch supervisors were calling simultaneously. Air traffic coordination had begun asking why aircraft that had been cleared only moments earlier were suddenly frozen at the gate. Thomas picked up the cockpit handset with steady hands that no longer felt steady. Operations, this is Captain Reed. We have received a network hold notification. Please advise. The response came almost immediately. Captain, remain where you are. Do not close the aircraft door. Do not modify the passenger manifest. Do not make any additional seating changes until Global Command contacts you directly. Thomas frowned. This cannot be related to a seating dispute. The voice answered without hesitation. Captain, this is no longer classified as a seating dispute. The line went silent. Back in the cabin, Melissa Grant still refused to believe anything had changed. Computer systems fail all the time, she said with a dismissive smile. This has absolutely nothing to do with you. Dr. Simone Avery looked toward the boarding door where ground crew had stopped moving altogether. Service vehicles remained parked. Jet bridges stayed connected. Even neighboring aircraft appeared unusually. Still as messages continued moving across airport operations. You are right, Simone answered calmly. It is not about me anymore. Eric Vaughn shifted uneasily in seat 1 Alpha for the first time. What exactly is happening? Simone did not answer him. Rachel Brooks finally found the courage to speak. Captain, she called gently toward the cockpit in trance. The audit records have been preserved. Melissa turned sharply. What did you say? Rachel held the tablet a little closer to herself. The original boarding history still exists. Melissa's expression hardened. Give me that tablet. Before Rachel could respond, Darius Cole stepped into the aisle. I would advise against altering evidence after an operational preservation order has been issued. Melissa laughed nervously. Evidence? You people are acting as though this is a federal investigation. Darius replied quietly. Sometimes investigations begin exactly like this. At that moment, Captain Reed returned from the cockpit. His face had changed completely. The certainty that had defined every decision since boarding began was gone. He walked directly towards Simone instead of Melissa. Before he could speak, his company phone rang again. I followed him as he answered. Captain Reed speaking. A composed executive voice came through the speaker loudly enough for several nearby passengers to hear. Captain, this is Global Command. Confirm that the passenger identified as Dr. Simone Avery remains on board your aircraft. Thomas glanced towards Simone before answering. Confirmed. The voice continued. Then listen carefully. Dr. Avery is the Chief Executive Officer of Crown Meridian Aviation Group, the controlling company overseeing this airline's operational systems. Effective immediately, every instruction she has issued regarding passenger record preservation takes precedence until the integrity review is complete. Silence settled over the cabin with astonishing speed. Eric slowly lowered his champagne glass. Rachel closed her eyes in quiet relief. Melissa stared at Simone as though she had forgotten how to breathe. Simone finally met her eyes and spoke with the same calm voice she had used. From the beginning, you did not deny me this seat because my ticket was invalid. You decided my ticket had to become invalid because I did not fit your idea of who belongs here. Before anyone could answer, another alert sounded from the cockpit, followed by a new message from Global Command requesting an emergency video conference with every senior executive connected to the operational hold. Captain Thomas Reed lowered the company phone slowly, but he did not lower his eyes. They remained fixed on Dr. Simone Avery as though he were seeing her for the first time. The confidence that had filled the cabin only minutes earlier dissolved into an uneasy silence. Melissa Grant looked from the captain to Simone and back again, searching for someone to tell her this was all a misunderstanding. Nobody did. Another notification appeared across the cockpit display, followed almost immediately by a secure video connection request from Global Command. Captain Reed accepted it. Within seconds, the face of Evelyn Price, chair of the board for Sterling Atlantic Airlines, appeared on the cockpit monitor. Her expression was calm, but every word carried unmistakable authority. Captain Reed, flight crew, and operations personnel, this aircraft is now part of an active corporate integrity review. Effective immediately, all administrative privileges connected to manual passenger record modifications are suspended pending investigation. Melissa's tablet vibrated. She looked down instinctively and tried opening the passenger manifest again. Access denied. She attempted another menu. Access denied. Her employee credentials had been reduced to basic cabin service functions only. Captain Reed checked his own operational tablet. His administrative override privileges had also disappeared. Rachel Brooks looked at her screen and quietly realized that her preserved audit files had already been copied into the protected investigation archive. Nothing could erase them now. Evelyn continued speaking. Preliminary analysis confirms a pattern of unauthorized first-class seat modifications affecting 152 departures across the network. Revenue associated with those operations exceeds $2.1 billion. The operational hold exists to protect passenger records, regulatory compliance, and the integrity of every affected flight. Eric Vaughn slowly stood from seat 1 Alpha, his earlier confidence replaced by uncertainty. There has to be some mistake, he said. I accepted the seat that was offered to me. Simone finally turned toward him. Accepting an upgrade is not the issue. Receiving a benefit created by someone else's discrimination is. Eric lowered his eyes without another word. Melissa took one hesitant step forward. Dr. Avery, if there has been a misunderstanding, perhaps we can resolve this privately. Simone answered with the same measured voice that had never once risen above conversation level. You had many opportunities to resolve it before learning my title. The words settled over the cabin more heavily than any accusation could have. Darius Cole folded his hands calmly. Respect offered only after authority is revealed is not respect. It is damage control. Several passengers nodded quietly. Rachel looked toward Simone with admiration that had nothing to do with executive power. She had defended the truth before knowing who Simone really was, and Simone knew it. Evelyn's voice returned through the cockpit speakers. Dr. Avery, the independent audit team, is assembled. We are prepared to begin executive review as soon as you authorize the next phase. Simone looked once around the cabin. She saw embarrassment on some faces, regret on others, and quiet courage in Rachel's. Then she spoke into her phone. Begin the second review. I want every complaint previously marked as a system error reopened. Every passenger deserves to know whether their experience was truly an accident or part of a pattern. Before anyone could respond, another secure notification appeared simultaneously across every operational screen on the aircraft. New witness evidence received. Source verified. Linking incident to prior case files. The secure notification remained on every operational screen while the cabin sat in complete silence. Nobody rushed to speak anymore. Nobody reached for another excuse. The truth had finally become stronger than assumption. Evelyn Price looked directly into the camera from Global Command. The witness evidence has been authenticated. Combined with the preserved audit records, we now have confirmation that this incident follows the same pattern identified in multiple unresolved passenger complaints. Effective immediately, every related case will be reopened by an independent review team. Melissa Grant lowered her eyes as another alert appeared on her company tablet. Her operational credentials had been suspended pending investigation, and her future with the airline would now be determined through the company's formal disciplinary process. Captain Thomas Reed received a similar notification requiring him to step aside from all administrative authority until the review concluded. No voices were raised. No dramatic speeches filled the cabin. Accountability arrived quietly, one system notification at a time. Eric Vaughn slowly picked up his jacket from seat 1 Alpha and looked towards Simone with visible regret. I should have questioned what happened instead of benefiting from it, he admitted. Simone nodded respectfully. The strongest character is not shown by never making a mistake. It is shown by recognizing one before someone else pays the price for it. Eric quietly returned to the seat originally assigned to him without another word. Rachel Brooks still held the tablet that had nearly lost the truth forever. Simone walked toward her with the same calm confidence she had carried from the beginning. You protected the facts before you knew who I was, Simone said. That is integrity. Never let anyone convince you that honesty is a small act. Rachel smiled through grateful tears. I was afraid. Simone answered gently. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing the truth while fear is still standing beside you. Around the cabin, passengers who had remained silent during the confrontation slowly began speaking. One elderly woman apologized for assuming the crew must have been right. Another traveler admitted he had seen similar situations before, but had never questioned them. Darius Cole looked around the first-class cabin and quietly said, every policy reflects the character of the people enforcing it. When character fails, policy becomes a disguise instead of a protection. His words lingered long after he finished speaking. Simone turned once more toward the cockpit. Release the operational hold in phases, she instructed Naomi through her phone. Every passenger record has been preserved. Every affected case has been secured. The system can move again because the truth has been protected. Within minutes, the departure network gradually returned to normal. Across airports throughout the country, aircraft began receiving clearance one by one as verified passenger records replaced altered ones. The hold that had paused 152 flights had never been about revenge. It had been about preventing 152 opportunities for the same injustice to continue unnoticed. Before taking her rightful seat in 1 Alpha, Simone paused beside Melissa. There was no anger in her voice and no satisfaction in her expression. You asked me to prove that I belonged here, she said quietly. The truth is that every passenger with a valid ticket already belongs. The real question is whether the people trusted with authority deserve the authority they have been given. Melissa could not answer. She did not need to. The systems, the evidence, and the witnesses had already answered for her. As the aircraft door finally closed and the engines prepared for departure, the cabin felt different than it had less than an hour earlier. Nothing about the seats had changed. Nothing about the uniforms had changed. But the standard had changed. And sometimes that is how lasting justice begins. Not with the loudest voice in the room, but with one person who refuses to let dignity be rewritten as easily as a line in a computer system.